So you've heard about the state of hate and where we are in this moment of time. Now, it's my pleasure to tell you how we at Eradicate Hate and all of our partners are responding. For many of you who started this journey with us in 2019 when Laura first started making calls, or in 2021 at the first summit, this was an event. It was an event with an aspiration of driving the development and deployment of effective strategies to reduce the risk of hate-fueled violence. In the years since that time, Eradicate Hate has grown. We started with about 125, 150 participants in 2021. This year we have over 1,100 participants in person and several hundred more watching us online. We started with everything happening in plenary. And the next year there were 7 tracks running simultaneously. The next year there were 32 working groups. Think about that for a second. 32 working groups. There's so much work that we can all do together. And so when I came to the summit in March with my team, I had the great pleasure of trying to figure out, all right, where do we go next? And we had already established, thanks to all of you, the reputation of Eradicate Hate as the world's leading convener to reduce the risk of hate-fueled violence. But we wanted to also build out that suite of complementary year-round programs. We now, thanks to one of our partners at the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships and their generous funding, have programs that you'll hear about over this next hour, like the Prevention Practitioners Network, a national network of over 1,500 interdisciplinary professionals. We have programs in the education sector, like Invent to Prevent, and we have programs that raise awareness. Our campaigns, Screen Hate and Upend Hate. You'll hear about both of those in a few minutes. So as you think about Eradicate Hate and you think about how we can work together, we're building the infrastructure of prevention here in this room and throughout this convention center over the next 3 days. And we look forward to many opportunities to collaborate with you, not just at this summit, but year-round. Laura mentioned this morning my incredible team. Many of you have had the opportunity to meet them, and many of them are about to come on stage. But I am so incredibly blessed to have been joined at Eradicate Hate by Rachel Hunkler, our Director of Programs and Evaluation, Ashley Bowers, our Director of Strategy and Operation, and Neil Saul, our Program Manager, and frankly, the mastermind behind the agenda for this summit. Hopefully they're familiar faces to many of you, but we also look forward to meeting many more of you. I'm so delighted that there are so many new faces at the summit this year. So please take a moment, if you see purple on a badge, take a moment to stop and introduce yourself. You'll notice that the summit, this summit, is broken out into 3 days with 3 themes. You just saw the state of hate, and that sets the tone for today. Today is foundational. Not only the state of hate, but what are we doing as a summit community to respond? Day 2 is success stories. What do effective prevention strategies look like in practice and how do we know that they work at all levels of a public health approach to prevention. And day 3 is sectors. We'll have 10 sectors meeting at once, and then we'll take the opportunity to do breakouts cross-sector, because what we're hoping you'll take away are those cross-sector collaborations. As we looked at the working groups for the summit, 32 is a very large number. It's very hard to do 32 things well. So we looked at where are those opportunities to have the greatest impact, the things that Eradicate Hate is uniquely positioned to do. And we narrowed that down to 11 working groups this year. And it's my pleasure to take this hour to introduce you to the work of our 11 working groups. If you see something and you want to learn more about that working group, check your agenda, because these working groups are meeting this afternoon, and we would love to welcome you into the conversation and get your input on the tremendous work products that these working groups are turning out this year. So this is your invitation to get involved, to think of yourselves as a partner of Eradicate Hate, and to find opportunities where we can work together, not just this week, but year-round. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. William Braniff, the director of the DHS Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships. The Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships is a generous funder of many of the programs of Eradicate Hate that you'll hear about this morning. Bill, come on up.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank our hosts and incredible partners at the Eradicate Hate Global Summit, and thank all of you for making the time to be here. There are 3 reasons that we are going to turn the tide on hate-fueled violence. The first is that the field is coalescing around the most comprehensive and proactive strategy for targeted violence prevention to date. This public health-informed approach blends over 3 decades of public health violence prevention experience with public safety. Unlike previous approaches that over-indexed on ideology, this is a behavioral-based approach that brings multidisciplinary teams of helping professionals together: social workers, counselors, mental and behavioral health clinicians, and public safety professionals. And it leverages an evidence-based. And because this strategy is evidence-based, and because we are committed to measurement and evaluation, we're going to get better and better at this over time. Second, with both intentionality and passion, we are collectively building a broad community of practice and making strategic investments to professionalize prevention as a discipline. Together, this community of practice is going to create a culture of violence prevention. And remember, culture shapes behaviors. If we demonstrate to our communities that violence is preventable, they will take steps to prevent it. And third, and I mean this with all seriousness, we have love on our side. The longer I've spent in this field, the more closely I've studied it, the more I'm convinced that hate can't stand up to love for very long. I'm about to show a video, and on behalf of the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, I'd like to dedicate it to the best among us, those that have experienced incomprehensible pain and turned it into love, hope, and purpose. To the survivors with us today, so long as you are here, the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships will be here to support you. Thank you.
I think most people who are in this space of violence prevention in any respect will tell you that they didn't anticipate that that's where they'd end up.
My name is Raymond Whitfield. I am the son of Mrs. Ruth E. Whitfield. She was the eldest victim in the Buffalo, New York grocery store massacre.
I'm the proud mother of Lieutenant Richard Collins III. After our son was murdered, we knew we could not be silent.
I was about to finish the marathon when the first bomb exploded, seeing people rushing in to help, the offer of security that came from the city for all of us that were impacted. And I think most importantly for a lot of us, we were visited by veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars that had similar injuries to ours.
The aftermath of the horrific massacre, my siblings and I gathered, and all we knew is that if that had happened to one of us, our mother would definitely be standing up and trying to find solutions. And so we knew that we had to do something.
We're co-founders of the Second Lieutenant Richard W. Collins III Foundation, and my purpose, our purpose now is to fulfill bringing forward our son's legacy through the foundation we created and to achieve some measure of healing.
The impact for us for forming the foundation was really focused on survivors moving forward, but also the important role that survivors could play in prevention and their stories. It's one thing for a doctor, a nurse, a therapist, a family member to say you're going to be okay. It's quite another when somebody who's been through something similar can talk to you about the injuries, can share their stories, and you start to see paths to move forward.
The King Soopers shooting happened, and it was literally very close to my home and in my own neighborhood and in my own community. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that could have been my kid in there. Having a 15-year-old hit you just a little bit differently when you work in this space. And I knew that I had to do better and that the families that we serve deserve better. I have kind of a unique history where I worked for the juvenile justice system for 10 years and I was a social worker through child welfare for 10 years. What I knew from being in the juvenile justice and child welfare system is that oftentimes it was too late. We know that we have to do something different. We can respond after an incident has happened, or we can prevent an incident from happening. And the only way we know an incident is going to happen is by families telling us they're worried about somebody. So that's really how we talked about it, is like, how do we help families and communities identify their own problems?
5 years ago, when I got into this space, no one was talking about games and extremism. I actually joined this space because the Anti-Defamation League published a report in 2019, and one of the things they talked about was that 1 in 4 game players said they had witnessed white supremacist ideology in game. But it really struck me and stood out to me because 1 in 4 just seems so high to me as someone who was a lifelong gamer. So this is a unique problem, but also a unique opportunity for solutions. So when we're talking about building resilient communities and we're talking about prevention strategies and interventions, looking at gaming cultures and how to shift that culture may be a particularly effective intervention to start looking at and doing more research in and around.
The targeted violence event that happened in Pittsburgh was an anti-Semitic event that attacked a synagogue that is in my neighborhood. And it's in the neighborhood where I'm raising my 2 children, 5th generation in the same neighborhood. Their grandparents had both grown up there on both sides. And so when our neighborhood was violated by somebody, I knew that we had to do something if they were going to feel safe to be Jewish there. That's what motivated me to come do this work. I wanted to make sure that the community was resilient, that people knew that they could be safe again, that my kids knew they could be safe again. And I wanted to believe myself that we could learn from this and that it wouldn't just end, but instead it would be something that would become an opportunity for growth. I have really found that my job is to look at the big picture, not just the individual in front of me, but how do you make a stronger community that has more emotional literacy, that has more trauma awareness, that can continue to use those skills as needed in the future.
To do this work is what keeps me going. If I were not doing this work, I would feel useless. I would feel like I've lost my mother in vain.
Even though we have to live through the personal pain of our personal experience, I know that this thing is bigger than us, and that's what gives us the motivation and the drive to want to do more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those stories can change trajectory, and that is our intent with this, is not only do we work with survivors, but we also work in the prevention space to provide that piece. There's no one answer to prevention, but stories can make a difference.
Thank you to the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships for capturing footage of our attendees last year and helping them to tell their stories. This is why we do this work. And this is why we hope all of you will join us in doing this work. And now it is my pleasure to bring out both our program team and our co-chairs of our working groups to share how the summit is responding to the current state of hate. First, I would like to welcome to the stage Rachel Hunkler, our Director of Programs and Evaluation, and Jillian Hunchak, the co-chair of both the Youth Red Flags and Protecting the Protectors working groups. Rachel and Jill.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? No. Can you hear me now? I'd have to shout. I think mine's on. Mine's on? Yeah. Okay.
It's not cool.
Hold on.
Because they're just.
Can you hear me now? No. Just gonna go this way.
Jesus.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. My name is Rachel Hunkler. I'm the Director of Programs and Evaluation at the Eradicate Hate Global Summit, and it is my pleasure this morning to tell you about two of our year-round programs that focus on raising awareness. Both of these programs are based on the evidence that those most likely to observe warning signs are friends and family members closest to the people at risk of perpetrating acts of hate-based violence. So our first program is the Upend Hate campaign, which just launched last month. Upend Hate is a nationwide bystander awareness campaign and training program for youth ages 12 to 22. Upend Hate empowers youth to help keep their communities safe by teaching them what hate looks like, both online and in person, what the warning signs of hate-based violence look like, when and how to intervene as an upstander, and finally, when and how to seek help from a trusted adult for peers that may need extra support. The campaign's comprehensive website provides tools, conversation starters, educational games and videos, and a downloadable toolkit, all of which are free and accessible to the public. In addition, we've partnered with Community Matters, who are running 10 pilot programs in middle schools and high schools across the country, training young people as safe school ambassadors for Upend Hate in their respective schools. As we're unfortunately seeing acts of hate-based violence being perpetrated by increasingly younger offenders, Upend Hate empowers young people to keep their communities safe. We are very grateful to be partnering with Community Matters, as I mentioned, as well as the Riley Group and Moonshot on this Upend Hate project. We're also thankful to be working with the amazing team at the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships on their Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant Program, who supports this project. All the resources, as I mentioned, they're all free, they're all available to the public. I encourage you to visit upendhate.org to access those resources. You can also follow us on Instagram at upendhate. Our second Raising Awareness program is the Screen Hate campaign. This was Upend Hate's predecessor back when the team was at the McCain Institute before we moved to Eradicate Hate. And Screen Hate focuses on a target audience of parents and caregivers of teens and young adults. It provides these parents with tools and resources that they need to help youth safely navigate hate online. The site involves 3 sections: the Prepare section, which dives into the 11 online platforms where young people are most likely to encounter hateful content. There's the talk section, which provides conversation starters for adults to have those critical discussions with young people about hate online and how to navigate online spaces. And finally, the prevent section, which provides reports and resources for adults who are looking for more of a deep dive into the topic of preventing online hate. Just like with Upend Hate, all resources are free, available to the public, and the website for that is screenhate.org. So we encourage you to check both of those out. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill to talk about working group efforts for raising awareness.
Thank you, Rachel. Can everyone hear me? I think this is on. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jillian Hunchak. I am a research analyst at the Canada Centre for Community Engagement and Prevention of Violence, which is a part of Public Safety Canada. And I've had the pleasure of serving as the co-chair for two fantastic working groups over the last year. These would be Youth Red Flags, which I've co-chaired with my colleague Jacob Ware, and Protecting the Protectors, which I've co-chaired with my colleague Tom Thorley. Unfortunately, neither of them could join us this year, so I'll be hogging the stage for the next 6 minutes or so to talk about these two outstanding groups of people. And I'll start with Youth Red Flags. This group started out as an effort to identify and tackle the issues facing youth radicalization to violence, specifically rooted in the incel or involuntary celibate phenomenon, so more of a focus on gender-based violence, which has inspired multiple attacks since at least 2014. Very quickly, however, it became apparent that the issues around youth radicalization to violence were far broader and required a more holistic approach. Members shared a growing concern that this phenomenon is spreading and involves many different entry points, ideologies, and complex drivers. Most importantly, they shared that practitioners and caregivers desperately need more resources to address the issue. Practitioners shared the difficulties and frustrations they have faced in trying to access and engage with youth, especially in cases where parents or caregivers conflate intervention with incarceration. Educators reported feeling lost and unequipped to challenge the new and dangerous ideas spreading among youth in their classrooms. And everyone involved agreed that the lack of networks, centralized resources, and established research on this topic is impeding effective prevention and intervention efforts. So in response, we broadened our scope, and we've begun to map out the issues in this area of work. We drafted up trainings to be offered to law enforcement, educators, and other stakeholders to learn more and respond appropriately. We've begun work on compiling a list of risk factors and concerning behaviors, and we've discussed how to do this work responsibly, contextually, and with the safety and well-being of youth at the forefront of every step. As a next step, we will be looking at how to best integrate youth perspectives into this work, discussing how we can support resource sharing and communication networks among different agencies, and mapping out how to best streamline the most pressing issues facing youth. But in order to do this, we want to hear from you. If you are a practitioner, an educator, a researcher, or any other professional that works on the topic of youth radicalization to violence, we really want to hear your perspective. Your input will help us better focus our efforts and create resources that will help you do the critically important work that brings you to this summit. So the Youth Red Flags Working Group will be meeting today at 2:50 p.m. in room 303, I believe, to discuss the direction forward. So please join us and share your expertise. Moving on to Protecting the Protectors. This working group is committed to developing resources to improve the digital, psychological, and physical well-being of everyone working to counter violent extremism. We all know, many of us firsthand, the unique threats that this work can carry with it. Researchers and practitioners are often faced with constant repeat exposure to violent extremist material, which can cause psychological distress. Those working online may risk being doxxed or targeted in harassment campaigns. Social workers and interventionists who do the critical work of engaging face-to-face with clients must navigate working intimately with people who may wish to do them harm. Many of you even come to this field through firsthand experience with violent extremism, putting you in the difficult position of navigating the psychological impact of your experiences whilst continuing to do this work. And in addition to all of this, the emerging research is showing us that those with marginalized identities face these risks in even greater measure. We cannot improve our knowledge and evidence bases, our interventions, our public health models, or our partnerships if we cannot keep the people doing this work safe. We need to create policies, guidelines, and frameworks for institutional support if we want to retain and recruit the best and brightest in this field. We need to protect our people so that they can focus completely on preventing and countering violent extremism. And that is exactly what this working group has set out to do. So over the past year, we have pooled our expertise to draft up a handbook that aims to make safety and well-being accessible and comprehensive for everyone that works in this field. The handbook is designed to contain every aspect of practitioner and researcher safety, encompassing the online and offline spaces, as well as physical, social, and psychological well-being. We will be launching the handbook in various formats to improve accessibility, including online and offline versions, and we plan to integrate a feedback function on the website version in order to continuously update the content as new research and methods emerge. Now, what we have brought to the summit this year is a first draft, and we want your feedback. So the working group will be meeting today at 1 p.m., also in room 303, to present this draft, discuss plans for future work, and gather feedback on our efforts so far. So again, please join us and share your experience on this critical topic. And just a note that if you cannot make these meetings but want to learn more about either of the working groups I've talked about this morning, please feel free to track me down at any point this week, and I will be happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel and Jill. The next segment of our work at the summit, as we all work together to respond to the current state of hate, is education. And for education, we have a whole range of initiatives. I'm going to welcome back to the stage Rachel Hunkler, once again, our Director of Programs. I would also like to welcome Nick Haberman and Bob Scheer, co-chairs of our K-12 working group, and Christine Hoover, one of the co-chairs of our higher education working group, to cover the summit's work on education.
Hello again. I think my microphone is working now. Okay, great. Hi, I'm delighted to tell you about yet another program run year-round by the Eradicate Hate Global Team and Partners, which is our Invent to Prevent, or I2P as the acronym, program, and it's our Student Innovation Program. So this is an innovative experiential learning program that challenges high school and college-age students to design, implement, and measure the success of a unique initiative, product, or tool that addresses acts of targeted violence, hate crimes, or terrorism in their specific communities. I2P follows a public health approach, so student projects build evidence-informed solutions that address targeted violence by bolstering protective factors and addressing risk factors. So over the course of a semester, students research local issues of hate-based violence, they come up with an action-based solution, they implement this solution, and then they measure any shifts in attitudes, knowledge, and/or behavior in their target audience. I2P is free of cost to the participating institutions, and student teams can receive a modest budget to apply towards their project costs. We are so grateful to the Department of Homeland Security's Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, or CP3, to be working with them on a new contract over the next year, implementing this program in partnership with Adventure Partners, Media Fusion, and DCG Communications. Together, we guide, coach, and support teams throughout the program period. Since the spring of 2021, more than 1,200 high school and college students across the country have participated in I2P. We've had 138 high school programs across 26 states, as well as 119 colleges and universities across 32 states. We have seen so many innovative solutions created by I2P students, from peer mentorship programs at local elementary schools to wellness rooms on college campuses. We've seen the use of AI to help concerned bystanders find resources for at-risk loved ones, to the creation of board games and digital apps that encourage social connections. You will have an opportunity to hear from several I2P students about their innovative solutions to hate at tomorrow's Diffusing Hate on Campus plenary session, so I encourage you all to check that out. And with that, I will turn it to Nick and Bob.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Nick Haberman. In 2022, 2 local school districts sent small groups of students right here to the Eradicate Hate Global Summit to screen the Not in Our Town film, Repairing the World: Stories from the Tree of Life. Immediately following the film screening, students returned to their schools and transformed their post-film thoughts and feelings into actions. One of the attending schools, South Allegheny School District, actually created an Eradicate Hate Club the day of the film screening and spent the remainder of their school year helping to combat hate through celebrations and commemorations of heritage months and cultural observances.
And building on that early success, last year, the K-12 Education Working Group, led by Nick and I, along with David McDonald, the superintendent of the South Allegheny School District, coordinated an Eradicate Hate Student Summit on day 2 of this global summit. 14 high schools brought students to screen Repairing the World, but this time we added structure and activities to create a full-day experience. Additionally, the Grable Foundation provided each school $1,000 to support student-led anti-hate projects back in their home school districts.
Between September of 2023 and February of 2024, students worked with educators and each other to build partnerships, host events, and build awareness around hate. Some schools hosted screenings of Repairing the World in grade-level assemblies and after school at public events. In February, all 14 schools reconvened at Chatham University to share their successes and challenges with one another.
And to share the story, we created a 6-minute video that you can watch if you scan the QR code that is on the screen. And additionally, the AIU is working on a playbook to help other communities across the nation replicate the work being done here in Pittsburgh.
Inspired by students and teacher demand for 1027 guest speakers in schools, last year also saw the creation of the 1027 Speakers Bureau through a partnership between the Light Education Initiative and the 1027 Healing Partnership. Known as REACH, the Speakers Bureau consists of family members and survivors of the 10/27/2018 Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. They share stories with students, schools, and organizations to remember their loved ones, to educate, and to combat hate. You'll learn more about REACH later this morning.
And last summer, the K-12 Working Group also sparked the creation of a new position at the AIU in partnership with the Tree of Life nonprofit organization, a coordinator of civic engagement and anti-hate education. Nick was hired for this position, and since then, the AIU has worked with the Eradicate Hate team to coordinate the 2024 Student Summit happening tomorrow in this building.
Tomorrow, during the school day, we will be joined by 29 high schools from 25 school districts, approximately 350 local students and teachers, and what may be one of the largest multi-school, non-competitive gatherings of students in southwestern Pennsylvania history. 100% of schools that attended last year volunteered to return. 100% of our spots for new schools were filled well before the deadline, and we actually had to turn schools away due to the demand that exceeded our supply.
So once again, students will come to Eradicate Hate to become inspired, prepared, and empowered to combat hate in all its forms. Schools will again leave with $1,000 from the Grable Foundation to support anti-hate projects, and they will once again be invited to reconvene in the spring of 2025. Additionally, in order to prevent returning schools from having the same activities, we have a variety of breakout sessions for them, including meetings with REACH and the Healing Partnership.
This afternoon, our K-12 Education Working Group will meet to discuss our plans for continued student engagement. Since schools are the perfect location to host anti-hate film screenings, the Film Working Group has joined with us in the K-12 Education Working Group. Lastly, this year, we hope to meet with other working groups to explore how we can support one another to better achieve our missions. If you're a member of another working group and you have ideas about collaboration, please find us and let's discuss how we can support one another.
So we're very happy with the early success of the Eradicate Hate Student Summit and appreciate the summit organizers investing in the power of young people to help eradicate hate. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Christine Hoover, and I co-chair the Higher Education Working Group. I co-chair with someone named Ken Stern, who would be here with us today, except he's celebrating the holidays. So it's a pleasure to be able to share with you our collective work together. I also want to make sure that I mention the other centers for the study of hate that exist across the United States. For example, the Collaboratory Against Hate here in our host city with the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon, or most recently, the UCLA Initiative to Study Hate, or the Bard Center for the Study of Hate that was founded in 2018, and the Gonzaga Center for the Study of Hate that was actually founded more than 25 years ago in 1997. So as researchers, as faculty members, as administrators, as students who have been working on this issue to try and get to the root causes, just as we are all doing here in this room, what I'd like to do is highlight the work that we've been doing from the past year, since the 2023 summit. And to bring to your attention a special initiative, you can see that there will be a QR code that's posted on a slide. And that QR code is an invitation to employers, to employees, to community members, to community leaders, to help us understand better how we can create a certificate in the field of hate studies. It doesn't exist right now. You can get other degrees that are similar and cover similar topics. But we're curious about the potential to have people who are experts in their field, be that counseling, be it nursing, whatever the particular area is, how can they also get the additional knowledge in the field of hate studies to be able to recognize, see, prevent, and address hate when it comes across their path in their daily work? So I invite you to use this QR code to take the survey that is about 10 minutes long, not too long, and we will also have it at the working group session, which is at 1 o'clock today in room 404, if you miss the QR code here. But it becomes really important to know, do employers want this type of educational opportunity that may be just a little bit less than a master's degree, or might just be a professional certificate that anyone who is over the age of 18 might complete as well? So in addition to this initiative, in terms of a potential certificate for the study of hate, we've also been working on a primer for the field of hate studies, because oftentimes what we're looking for is that connection between education and what people do in their daily work. And so with that primer, it will be published free and available to the public in the Journal of Hate Studies, and it'll be forthcoming in the spring of 2025. There's a third initiative that I'd like to share with you, just kind of in summarizing a little bit of the work that we've been doing, which is also working on a documentary. It's a documentary of the story of Carla Pepperzak. She's a woman who's 101 years old, amazing individual who happens to live in the state of Washington. But when she was a teenager during World War II, she was a member of the Dutch resistance. And in addition to changing the ID cards for individuals, helping individuals hide, get them food rations, she has continued to this day to share her stories in schools and looking for a way for more people to hear her story as a story of inspiration and hope and the ability to take action and the power that we each have. And so what I'd like to do is share this trailer with you that is told by Carla, her daughter, her granddaughter, and her great-granddaughter. Her great-granddaughter is the same age that Carla was during the war. So you'll see a multi-generational story here of what this trailer might be.
Who has a question for Ms. Pepperzak?
My question is that I wonder what the Holocaust was really about, because things get messed up in history all the time.
So what was the Holocaust really about? What did happen?
Right before, around that time, we had all gone to Amsterdam, and we had gone and visited the Anne Frank house, and Oma had said she knew Anne Frank.
And they just lived right around the corner. It was crazy knowing that my great-grandma knew Anne Frank.
I'm a Holocaust survivor. September 1942, I got my new ID, and I did not have to wear a star.
I mean, this is a brand new chapter.
When I was 18 years old, I joined the Dutch resistance.
Helping fellow Jews to find hiding places.
They could pick you up in the street. You never knew when they would take anybody away.
Carla Pepperzak is here with me. Give a round of applause for Carla.
And she continues to tell her story. Why?
The Nazis began not with a physical genocide, but by measures to exclude.
I still live it every day.
This is what happened when hatred went unchecked.
Unfortunately, it's become normalized, and that's really frightening.
This is her last gift to us.
This is not easy.
My name is Carla Olmon Pepperzak, and this is my story.
All right. Thank you, Rachel, Nick, Bob, and Christine. Our next area of work as a summit is capacity building. We consider ourselves the most comprehensive anti-hate convening in the world because we have so many sectors convened here in this room. And we have working groups addressing capacity and building the capacity of many different sectors. I'd like to welcome to the stage Neil Saul, Program Manager for the Prevention Practitioners Network at Eradicate Hate, Emma Cardelli, my co-chair on the Health Systems Continuing Education Working Group, Cynthia Dietl, co-chair of the Law Enforcement Working Group, Judge Ann Williams, co-chair of Judicial Process, and Katharina Meredith, co-chair of Peer Mentors Working Group. Thank you, ladies.
All right, good morning. So one seamless transition to the summit also includes the Prevention Practitioners Network, which is a national network of over 1,500 interdisciplinary professionals dedicated to using a public health approach to prevent hate-fueled violence. So we conduct capacity building workshops, we publish free practice guides, we host a national directory, which now has over 200 resources in every single state, over 70 licensed clinicians able and willing to accept referrals for those who are most at risk of targeted violence. But the entire goal of PPN is to support the capacity of practitioners and professionals, both who already work in this space, but also those who don't yet. The PPN directory was a working group that started 2 years ago here at the Global Summit when it was just an idea. And it now includes, like I said, resources in every state. And naturally, this work dovetails with so many of the other working groups at Eradicate Hate that works to build a community of practice in prevention work. And so with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Emma Cardelli, who's been leading the Health Systems Working Group along with myself and Brett.
Thank you, Neil. Good morning, everyone. What a pleasure to be here. So for our health systems work, the summit really has been a valuable space for gathering and for seeding ideas that have been critical next steps in beginning to socialize, to normalize a culture of targeted violence prevention in healthcare spaces. We are actively working on a 101 seminar for the American Psychological Association that aims to generate compassion and engender action amongst licensed clinical professionals who could be working in this space. And if any licensed mental health professionals are in the audience right now and want to provide input on that seminar, please come join us in room 301 at 1 p.m. Through the Prevention and Practice Learning community that is co-facilitated by my workplace, Boston Children's Hospital, and the Prevention Practitioners Network, we're building networks of mental health professionals designed to share knowledge and to facilitate peer-to-peer support so that no one provider is left with the enormous burden of worrying alone. From here, we're working together to disseminate a range of training opportunities and resources for any interested licensed clinical professionals so that folks who are new to this space can begin to feel confident and competent in their capacity to identify, assess, and respond to the potential for violence and join our community in this effort.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia, and I'm the Director and Associate General Counsel for the Civil Rights Team at Meta. I retired from the FBI in 2017 after a 22-year career investigating and supervising hate crime investigations. I'm proud to co-lead the Toolkit for Law Enforcement Working Group with Richard Aborn and Sarah Thompson. I've been in this work a long time. On the morning of 9/11, I convened the Law Enforcement Working Group in the New York office of the FBI. In our committee, we divided the members of the working group into subcommittees to identify what law enforcement training programs currently exist for hate crimes, and wanted to answer the question, what else? What else do we need? What more can we do? Regarding existing training programs, our working group members from across the globe recognize that sovereign nations approach hate crime differently. Training programs vary. Some are classroom-based, some are virtual, some are taught in the training academy, some are voluntary, and in some countries and states in the US, hate crime training is non-existent. Funding is a challenge. Prioritizing hate crimes is a challenge, not to mention defining what materials encompass the curriculum. This subcommittee gathered all this information into one document, and their work continues. Another subcommittee tackled the what else? What other information can we include in the toolkit to prevent and not simply respond to hate crimes? What materials and best practices can we push out to eradicate hate to, well, eradicate hate? Our international working group were instrumental in harvesting best practices, curricula, and training materials from across the globe to add to our toolkit. What role do public health officials play? Can we pursue restorative justice remedies? How can we encourage hate crime reporting? Their work continues, and I am so grateful for their dedication and time. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ann Williams. I'm a former judge of the U.S. District Court, Northern District of Illinois, and the U.S. Court of Appeals in Chicago, and co-chair the working group with Chuck Molenberg and Tim Lewis. The working group on the Judicial Toolkit to provide guidance and helpful information to trial judges who are managing high-profile hate crimes cases. These trials are among the most difficult that judges have to handle. Why? Defendants sometimes try to take over the courtroom, reject appointed counsel, represent themselves, try to use the trial as a platform to spread hateful ideology. We have examined and studied ways to help busy trial lawyers manage these cases. Our working group is almost finished with our judicial toolkit. We're gathering and reviewing final comments during our meeting later today that will take place at 1 o'clock, and we welcome you to attend. We expect to have the final version ready soon. Preparing the toolkit really was an effort that began before the last conference when Chuck Molenberg enlisted Ira Carroll and Isaac Will to prepare a draft of the toolkit, which was presented at last year's conference. Ira and Isaac researched the law, interviewed judges, prosecutors, and others involved in these high-profile cases, read transcripts of the trials, got advice on what worked and what didn't work. After discussing last year's draft, our members have provided helpful comments to the draft. Trial judges have to balance the many diverse rights of defendants and the interests of justice under the highest scrutiny, often as the world watches. The toolkit discusses defendants' rights, victims' rights, rights of the media to attend and report on the trial, the obligation of prosecutors, the rights and interests of jurors, including how to protect their privacy and their safety, how to insulate them from improper influences, the rights of survivors and victims' families to attend the trial. It offers guidance on courtroom security. It discusses the trial judge's authority and power to conduct a trial while taking into account the defendant's activities and defendants that might try to contaminate the trial as it proceeds. It covers judges' powers such as gag orders, whether you can talk about the trial outside the courtroom, and limits of a trial judge's power to control the defendant's speech and conduct during the trial. Hopefully from this short summary, you can see that a lot of time and effort, energy, and analysis has gone into preparing the judicial toolkit. We believe it will provide useful, practical guidance to judges trying these very important cases, guidance before, during, and after the trial. And we thank everyone who's made such an effort to contribute to this toolkit and look forward to releasing it and to getting your feedback. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Katarina Meredith. I'm a doctoral candidate at Georgia State University with John Horgan. I'm also the founder of Exit Nexus, a consulting company in this space. And the working group that I'm involved with is for peer mentors, even though we're expanding it now to all exit workers. Over the last year, we developed, members of the working group developed a curriculum for exit peer specialists. So that means people with lived experience, former extremists, are now able to help others disengage and reintegrate. In other areas of public health, we have seen great success with peer mentoring. Peer supporters, however, need proper training. They need to be held to standards. They need to be professionalized, which has happened in other fields. So we're applying those same lessons now to violent extremism. We wrote a 180-page curriculum. We then did a 4-day training, training former violent extremists in peer support, and did an evaluation of that training. The report should be coming out early next year. We also did a job analysis of the different roles that former extremists hold in PCBE. All of that allows us to better understand those roles and to provide adequate training and support. In order to expand beyond just that, we've developed standards and guidelines. So together with Dr. Gordon Clubb, I did a Delphi analysis, a Delphi study to look at what are the values that people hold when it comes to involving former extremists in work around PCBE. How do we do that in the most ethical way, in the most safeguarded way, respectful way for everybody? And so that will be coming out later this year. We're looking at all of those things that we've learned from the last year, and we're expanding it to how can we bring this to exit workers at large. So we've partnered up with Index, a new organization started in Germany, but it's going to be global for practitioners in the PCBE field. And of course, as always, with PPN and Eradicate Hate. The goal is now to help everybody in this field who are on the ground doing the work of disengagement, reintegration, rehabilitation, to better help them communicate with each other, provide resources, training, and do that at a global level so that lessons learned here in the US can easily be used elsewhere, and likewise from Europe and from Southeast Asia in order to facilitate that. The working group will be in room 321 at 250 to 350. And if you're at all interested in how exit workers can help make this field better on the ground, then please join us.
Thank you.
Raise your hand if you've learned something new about what Eradicate Hate is doing. Yeah, it's a lot of things going on and a lot of ways to get involved. Next, I want to welcome to the stage co-chair of our Survivors in Action Committee, Dawn Collins, co-chair of our Financial Sector Committee, Hans Jacobs Schindler, co-chair of our Video Games Committee, Jake Davey, and I will be sitting in for sports.
Dawn, you want to tell us about Survivors in Action?
Good morning.
My name is Dawn Collins, and I am the very proud mother of Lieutenant Richard W. Collins III, and I am the co-chair of Survivors in Action. What do we do with Survivors in Action? We are the voices of the survivors. It is our opinion that oftentimes the voices of the survivors and the victims are not heard. You often hear people give platitudes, and what I found, and as well as my co-chair, Raymond Whitfield, survivors don't just get over these horrific acts. We've met survivors all across this nation, and I have yet to hear one survivor say, "I'm over that." So therefore, as Survivors in Action, we are charged with amplifying the voices and victims of these horrific crimes to make sure that they are never forgotten. And Laura, I want to say thank you for hearing the voices of the victims and the survivors.
Wonderful. I fully understand that we are standing between you and your networking break, so I will be very brief. There's this wonderful expression says there's no such thing as a free lunch, except, of course, as you will realize later when you attend the Eradicate Hate Summit. So that means any human action, especially any organized human action, needs finances. And so it's really no surprise that violent extremists, especially organized networks of violent extremists, need to raise quite considerable amount of funds. Understanding how that works, trying to figure out how to disrupt this in an environment in which you have the First Amendment, and extremism is a hard thing to define in this country, is key to preventing and mitigating risks of hate. And hence I'm really, really happy that the summit with the Activating the Financial Sector Working Group has taken on that challenge and has tasked me and my colleagues in the working group to figure out ways on how this could be best achieved. Now, there's a lot that can be done, and there's very little research that has been done so far. So for this past year, the participating organizations in the working group really focused on US-based, racially and ethnically motivated extremist network online crowdfunding campaigns. This is a particular online tool that is set up to raise funds for charitable causes, and I'm sure many of your organizations have had such crowdfunding campaigns. But it is also a tool that is quite openly misused by REMV actors to raise their funds. So we collated information on one particular misused website or crowdfunding campaign website, looked at all of these campaigns, saw which ones led to actual violent offline action, and realized 3 points. So number one, there is a surprising amount of very openly conducted crowdfunding campaigns for violent REMV actors. It is really shocking to see how much violence and hate is just openly espoused and people still donate money. Secondly, we realized it's not just a fundraising tool. These online tools are used to move funds, they are used to pay activists in other parts of the country while masking as a charitable crowdfunding campaign. And third, very shockingly, there is absolutely no awareness in the private industry, whether it is the internet service providers or it is the financial industry, on who REMV actors are or who REMV networks are. This is simply something that doesn't figure in their business plan because there is no legal obligation for them to do so. So taking these three strategic issues forward, the working group is developing a range of education and awareness raising tools for particularly the private sector to counter these activities, to simply make people aware what their services are actually used for and who the people are who misuse their services. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more of what we've done and the data analysis that we did in the last year, please join us at the working group meeting at 2:50 in room 309 today. And then if you want to look at the potential tools that can be used to counter these financial activities, please attend the Follow the Money panel on Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the auditorium, where my colleagues Alexander Ritzmann from CEP and Mark Dwyer from ADL are going to speak, and me are going to speak about the various tools that governments and private sectors can use. Thank you.
Okay, I will be brief. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Davey. I am Director of Policy and Research at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. I've been working there for 10 years now to counter hate and extremism. I'm also an avid gamer, so when the opportunity arose to co-chair the working group here on gaming and extremism, I naturally jumped at the opportunity. Now, in no small part due to the excellent work of so many of us in this room, there has been a growing consensus that there is a big issue with gaming and hate. We know that 3 in 4 young people gaming online are targeted by harassment. We know that 1 in 10 have interfaced with white supremacist content. And we know that these are important mediums for extremists to market their ideas. We also know that video games are potentially incredibly powerful tools for good. However, whilst we have become adept at articulating the problems with these platforms, there is still really important work to do with building healthy gaming communities. So, last year at the summit, we brought together researchers, counter-hate practitioners, and representatives of industry to do just that, to start that conversation around how games can be used as tools for good and how we can build healthy communities. In the year since, individual members of the working group have gone on to achieve great things. We have developed educational resources to build positive gaming communities, including in-game environments. We have developed strategy toolkits to empower gamers and the gaming sector to respond to hate. And we've developed frameworks for advancing our understanding around how hate manifests in these online platforms, which we're now sharing with industry. So, some great achievements, but still a lot to do. So what I would ask is that if you are interested in this space, or you have ideas around how games can be used as a force for good, you join our public session this Wednesday at 1 o'clock to hopefully have a great discussion and tee up a program of important work for 2025. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jake. Our last working group is the sports working group. This was one of the summit's first working groups, and really looking at how we address not only hate in sports, but how sports can be a unifying force for good. And so our sports working group session is at 1 o'clock today. That will be a discussion of next steps. Where do we go? We'll be hearing directly from one of our keynotes, Tara Levine, on the Foundation to Combat Anti-Semitism's campaign to address Take a Time Out against hate, and thinking about, as a working group, where can we go with our next steps? What's the landscape, and where can we go with our next steps? So if you want to join that conversation, 1 p.m. today, and you'll also hear from Tara later this afternoon at 2 p.m. as a keynote. So thank you to all of you. This is how the summit is responding. Last up, sorry, we missed one person. So let me welcome Cynthia back up to the stage for Voices of Survivors. My apologies, Cynthia.
Doing this all on the fly, right? Well, good morning again, and no worries at all. I have the privilege of chairing the Voices of Survivors of Modern Day Hate working group. In 2022, I took part in a panel at Eradicate Hate where we discussed the power of survivor voices as well as lessons learned about how to best collect such voices and use them for educational purposes in ways that are respectful and preserve the integrity and dignity of those speaking. In 2023, our working group met and brainstormed on how to address a general lack of awareness among law enforcement and prosecutors about the impact of hate on an individual and their own community, or even the broader community. We agreed that there is power in storytelling to inspire compassion, build connection in community, and to heal. This year, we tackled the harder questions. How do we collect these stories? Audio? Video? Virtual reality? Where will we collect them? Who decides what stories will be collected? Where will they be housed? Who owns them? As someone who engages with survivors of hate daily, and as someone who has videotaped these survivors, I realized I was the wrong person to lead this effort. This work must be survivor-led. I contacted my dear friend, Dawn Collins, who co-chairs the Survivors in Action Working Group, and asked if she could absorb this work into her own efforts. She's a force. Have you met her? You got to meet her outside. Okay. Of course, she said yes. Thus, the work of the Voices of Survivors of Modern Day Hate will continue under the leadership of Dawn and Raymond Whitfield. Thank you so much.